The film begins with a college football game in which a young man called Cadden scores a successful touchdown, much to the pleasure of the audience. Soon after, a player from the opposite side called Brad knocks him down and then smacks Cadden, causing him to bleed. Brad is attempting to get the audience going after what he done as Cadden unexpectedly leaps on him and then beats him until he's literally unconscious, much to everyone's horror. The next day, he meets up with his girlfriend, Lisa, and tells her that he fears he's going insane. Lisa offers him some words of consolation before they begin kissing. While they're at it, the clouds part and a full moon appears, presumably waking up Cadden, who transforms into a werewolf. Lisa, get out of here. Cadden wakes up in the morning and notices blood all over the living room as he searches for his parents. When he sees them, he realizes he murdered them when he was still a werewolf. Just as Cadden is looking distraught about what he'd done, Lisa comes with the cops. But before they can enter the house, Cadden transforms back into a werewolf and flees. His story is then shown on television. Also, it is made known that he was adopted. Meanwhile, Cadden makes it to a pub after fleeing police detention. As he walks away, he notices two motorcyclists beating up a lady and attempts to get them to leave her alone. When the guys refuse, Cadden turns around and murders both of them while the lady flees. He is then able to steal one of the men's bikes and go to another location. His next trip is another pub, and after a period of sitting, a man named Joe strikes up a discussion with him, after which he reveals to Cadden that he, too, is a wolf and that he knows Cadden is one. Cadden is taken aback and quickly wants to know more about wolves and why he is one, despite the fact that he has not been bitten. Joe informs Cadden that he was born with it and is likewise a pure breed. He also notes the fact that there are others like them. Cadden was startled to hear this and then says he has to find the others so he can figure out what he is because he has no idea. Joe appears to hesitate, but he ultimately gives Cadden the address through a dart arrow on a map. Cadden then proceeds to the town. He then enters yet another tavern, where everyone appears to be staring at him. Gail, the barman, asks Cadden what he's doing there, and he tells her he just stopped in town and was searching for employment as well. As he glances around, he notices a man called Connor staring at him curiously. However, his eyes quickly grab the notice of Angel, the owner of the pub. Just then, Connor indicates for Haley to come over and meet Cadden. When she does, she attempts to convince him to dance with her, but he says he's not interested, so she walks away. Angel then has the opportunity to ask Cadden his name, but he gives her the wrong name. He also asks for her name, but before she can respond, a man called Deke arrives to begin a fight with Cadden, claiming Haley informed him Cadden harassed her. Cadden tells Deke he has no idea what he's talking about, but Deke and his men quickly appear to be ready to fight. Cadden leaves to prevent this from occurring and then waits in the bushes until Deke and his men arrive. He would then approach Deke while he was alone, but before they can say anything, Deke transforms into a werewolf. Cadden, on the other hand, overpowers him, but Deke eventually manages to flee. Cadden is ready to go for his bike when a man called John spots him and offers him a job on his farm, which Cadden accepts. Cadden meets John's wife on his first day. Cadden quickly begins working, and everything appears to be going well for him until Connor appears one day. Connor is perplexed as to why John hired a stranger, but before Cadden can respond, John appears to defend him, claiming Cadden is his nephew. Connor does not believe this and claims that Cadden beat Deke. However, John and Cadden are able to deny his accusation, with Cadden saying that he only tried to talk to Deke alone after Deke and his guys tried to beat him up at the bar. The next day, the story of the bikers who Cadden had killed is featured on the news, but before they can mention his name, he switches the TV off, with Clara and John looking at him surprisingly. He then tells them he wants to go out to town. As he approaches Angel's bar, a guy named Carter appears out of nowhere and tells him he needs to leave town before the cops arrive. Carter also cautions Cadden about Connor, warning that he is dangerous and that he must leave before Connor discovers him. Cadden and the stranger are conversing when they see Connor nearby, allowing the man to depart. Cadden then walks into the pub, where he encounters a drunk girl and Angel, who informs Cadden they're sisters. After that, Connor and his pack accompany Carter to the woods, where Connor inquires as to what Carter was telling Cadden. When Carter doesn't speak much, Connor and his group must hunt him down as a game. Cadden is riding his bike home when he notices wolf-like sounds coming from the woods and decides to pursue them. While on his way, he is startled by Angel, who claims that Connor and his men killed someone and she wants to know who. They are subsequently able to make their way to a cliff where they observe Connor's pack eating on Carter's body parts, which causes Cadden to vomit. Angel then verifies to him that Connor and his men, like Cadden, are all wolves, and he's astounded that she knows about him. When Cadden returns to John's house with Angel, John and Clara are watching the news and discussing Cadden. Clara quickly hugs him and apologizes, but Cadden doesn't understand since he insists it wasn't her fault. However, John claims that it was his fault. He then reveals Cadden's mother, Lucinda, as a purebred wolf who lived in town until Connor became interested in her. He would finally take advantage of her and get her pregnant while keeping everyone in the shadows. John and Lucinda's father were forced to stage Lucinda's death, and then later gave up her baby for adoption, just days before she took her life. John also informs Cadden that Connor has been thinking about his legacy recently, and that despite turning all of his pack members into wolves, he now wants to have a kid with Angel, who is also a purebred wolf, along with Gale, with Clara not being a wolf at all. Later, when they're alone, Angel tells Cadden that it was all planned and that it was the only way Connor wouldn't kill the people she cared about. They end up conversing for a long before getting caught up in the moment, with Angel poised to kiss Cadden. However, he appears uninterested, claiming that all the adrenaline will cause him to transform into a werewolf. He also didn't want to hurt her. Despite this, Angel doesn't seem to mind, and they spend some quality time together, despite the fact that both of them have turned into wolves. When they return to the residence, they find two men inside called Larson and Robinson. John presents them to Cadden, claiming they were members of the first pack that moved in town. Both guys are unsure about having Cadden around since they still believe Angel should have a kid for Connor so that there may be peace. This allows Cadden to declare that he'd walk over to fight and kill Connor, and while he's doing so, John and Angel are unable to do so. When Cadden arrives at the location where Connor and his pack are, he informs Connor that he is his father. Connor, on the other hand, does not believe it and instantly orders that his pack pursue and kill Cadden. Cadden is soon overpowered and defeated. Just before he had to jump off a cliff to escape Connor's wolves, Cadden sees a vision of Joe encouraging him to get up as he falls. But it turns out he's only dreaming. However, it is plenty to get him rolling until he meets Angel. The next morning, Cadden, who is still severely injured, informs John that he made a decision not to kill any of the wolves. John says it was a big mistake, and he had to kill if he wanted to survive. He also then tells Cadden that he needs to change to a werewolf so he can recover, as he's unable to do it on his own. John asks Angel to help him, and as she kisses him, he suddenly starts healing as he's turning. Cadden and Angel then go outside, and she tells him that he needs to run so his legs can heal. Cadden struggles at first, but after a period of running, he is completely fine. Cadden informs Angel that he's going to take on Connor and his pack again, and that this time he'll make sure he kills them. With this, he gets the idea to place explosives using a method created by John, and they all set to work. When they're finished, Cadden will begin planting them across the field right outside the barn. While doing so, he instructs Angel to go to a safe area and that he'll come get her once he's finished with Connor. Cadden suddenly hears Angel's screams and goes to the house only to find out that Connor had taken Angel, Gale, John, and Clara, with a written note also telling Cadden to come over to the mating ceremony between him and Angel. At the hill where Connor's pack normally hangs out, John, Clara, and Gale are put in a cage, and Angel is soon taken out of a tent, after which Connor says it's time for him to be with Angel, which she doesn't welcome. Around the same moment, two of Connor's men on the lookout for Cadden show up and are slain by Cadden, putting him just on time before Connor takes Angel away. Connor quickly orders his men to pursue Cadden, but he manages to avoid and beat up several of them just as he frees Angel and flees, with Connor and his men behind him. Angel also transforms into a werewolf and battles off a guy before freeing John, Clara, and Gale, telling John he must go rescue Cadden. John may take a quick way to the barn and climb to the top with a gun. Cadden also manages to lead the entire pack to the field immediately outside the barn, and John then begins blasting explosives at the areas on the field, killing some of Connor's soldiers in the process. Connor becomes enraged and instantly notices Cadden inside the barn. He doesn't hesitate to go in along with his pack, but again, Cadden outsmarts them and locks them inside, after which he tells John to shoot the explosives on the walls of the barn. John does this, and parts of the barn explode, and as Cadden is looking to see the damage, Connor jumps out, still unharmed, and they then have to fight. Both men are able to beat each other at first. However, Cadden is able to overpower Connor and leave him weak and bleeding. As he's about to finish the job, Connor tells Cadden that he didn't force Lucinda and that they loved each other. Just as Cadden is thinking about what to do, Joe emerges behind him and then comes over to mock Connor for not being strong enough to overcome Cadden, and that he knew all along that it was the only way he'd be able to murder Connor once he'd had Joe prohibited from town. Joe states that his brother, Carter, had been sending him information and that he was now returning to finish the job. After following Cadden down, murdering his parents, and framing him to set up the conflict, Cadden is enraged to hear this, but when he attempts to punch Joe, he is too weak and Joe hits him instead. Just then, Connor informs Joe that he has murdered and eaten Carter, which convinces Joe to kill him. He then confronts Cadden, whom he also manages to beat up until John can shoot him. Joe tries to flee before John can fire another shot, but Cadden catches him, and Joe informs him that wolves are not meant to kill unless for food or defense, while he starts a cigarette. As he's able to stand up, Cadden cunningly takes the cigarette away from him, and then throws it to the ground, where there appears to be an explosive. Joe then taunts Cadden, encouraging him to show off what he's got. And, well, it's too late before he realizes there's an explosive just under where he's standing, and the cigarette's light has lit it up. Joe explodes, and Cadden is able to get away just in time to avoid being killed by the blast. The next day, when Cadden wakes up, he's in bed with Angel. Later that day, Cadden and Angel then say their goodbyes to John and Clara, and then Gail, as they ride Cadden's bike out of town.